Alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, we'll pick up where we left off. And we were last talking about hudud in the Kitab al-Hudud. And then we're coming into the later ones, which is the had for sariqah. And also, we'll come across a couple things, but also I mentioned that there's one principle that when we are talking about hudud, that we always need to be certain that this thing is actually, that this thing actually occurred from this person. So there's a precautionary measure that is always looked at in all of the hudud. If there's any shubha in anything like that someone does, say someone thinks that they were doing something okay, but there was but they're actually doing something wrong. In this case, this would stop the hudud from happening. And as I mentioned in zina, like technically speaking, if somebody gets married without a wali, we would say that their marriage is invalid. And if you don't have sex inside of a marriage that is valid, then this is haram. This is like zina. But would you actually take a Hanafi to task if he did this and say that, oh, we're going to apply the hadd of zina? No, we wouldn't do this, because there's a shubha here. And so whenever there's a shubha, or say someone made a mistake or something, in this case, all of this, we'd always do anything that we can, anything that's a mistake in something, or like any shubha or anything in this case, we're always going to use this as an excuse for this person. We're always going to give them as many excuses as we can before we'd ever put a hadd on a person. And so this will come up when we talk about the hadd sariqah, inSha'Allahu. And a last thing, when talking about going into the question the brother had before, when he was talking about someone that was known for promiscuity, and they were going about, and can we give nasiha for this? When someone gives nasiha for, of course, when someone is looking to get married, they need to give nasiha, and this is a time where it's not ghiba. But ghiba is, this is only to the amount that's necessary to get across the point. So we can't say more than what is necessary to get across the point of what you're trying to warn this person about. So you want to warn this person that this girl was hanging out with a bunch of men and she would spend the night with them, okay. But this is one thing, but to actually say the word that she was sleeping around, like, this is another thing. And to get across the point with the least amount of words that we can to use for this is the thing that is prescribed. And of course, if this particular, like this girl or whatever that was mentioned, or if there was a girl that was mentioned and that or that was known for these things, if she made tawbah, then we should never talk about this thing. This is like as if it never happened, and especially if she made it known that she changed her ways, like without a doubt, like this is something that's different. And so like this is like it's important that someone understands that tawbah wipes out the past that happened, and that we should never say something that goes beyond the limits of what we need to do for nasiha. If we're giving nasiha, we only go to the limits of nasiha and no more. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So we'll pick back up where we left off. And Abu Shujaa, he says here, rahimahullah, faslun وتقطع يد السارق بثلاث شرائط. And so he says that the hand of the sariq, the person who steals, and this stealing is something that is like when we say stealing in English, this could be stealing up, like from right. You have someone standing in front of you, and you just grab it right from them and run. This is one type. But like sarika usually means like this is something that is stealing from something that without someone knowing, without seeing. So he says here, وَتُقْطَعُ يَدُ السَّارِقِ بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطٍ. And these are the three conditions that he mentions here. The first two of these conditions are something that is already, like we talk about at the very beginning of everything, which is hadd taklif. So this person needs to have reached they need to be held accountable, which is of course that they're baligh. And then the next thing is that they're aqil. So they're sane, and they also are at the level of maturity, like they've reached the time of accountability. And something that's also mentioned at the beginning of a lot of times when we talk about a sariqah, and there's some people that they'll say like, okay, what about like the malahida or whatever, and they want to talk about what's the deal with Islam. Like if somebody has their hand cut off, then if somebody cuts off somebody else's hand, there's a diya for it, and there's a diya of there's like a full diya. If someone takes off a hand, then they would have half a diya for that person, like for the hand being taken off. And this is like 50 we talked about the 100 camels, 50 camels. But then if somebody steals, they get their hand taken off. If they steal a ruba dinar, which is like $300 worth, it's like $310, then they would get their hand taken off. So what's the deal with Islam, with that? And of course, the wisdom behind this, and the answer to this, is as Al-Qadi Abdul Wahhab al-Maliki, he answered this, and he said, "Wiqayat nafsi aghlaha." So he says, "Wiqayat nafs," and like the fact that the Sharia is looking to protect the people. So when the person is when a person in normal, like his blood is haram on everyone else, so the Sharia looks to protect people, and so it makes that the price of this person's hand is high if someone wants to take it without a right. And then he says, وَأَرْخَصَهَا وِقَايَةُ الْمَالِ. And so if somebody's going to take the protection of mal, like protection of money and possessions, made it cheap. So if someone, so to protect the money, it's been made cheap. So when the person was not stealing, the price of his hand is very high, and if the person steals, then it's the price that he stole. And so there's a hikmah that comes from what Allah does in all the Sharia, and of course this is for the preservation of mankind. It's not something that we can just put like little put a price tag on a hand and say take it or leave it as you want, but rather Allah gives us these guidelines and whatnot with that. And of course, if anyone applies like the hudud, you'll see that there's very few people ever gonna steal, and there's very few hudud that will ever be applied after the initial understanding that this is actually going to happen. And so he says there's three conditions for the hand being cut off, with three conditions met. The first of these two we mentioned, that the person is at the age of accountability and they're aware, which is like that they're mukallaf. And then he mentions also here that they steal يسرق نصابا قيمته ربع دينار. And so he mentions here in that the person he steals nisaban, which is the amount. Like if we're talking about the nisab and zakah, this is the amount that it has to reach, and once it reaches this amount, then it will be considered. And so he says here rubu' dinar, and rubu' dinar it's 4 grams of gold. So the dinar is gold, and so this is about 4 grams of gold in this day and age. And 4 grams of gold, I just checked, is it's like around $308. So $308, if this person steals something for the amount of $308, this is how much it's worth, whatever he stole. It's not that he's stealing only money, but he can steal anything, but the worth of that is $308. Then in this case, he would be subjected to this had. And so then he mentions here, min hirzi mitlihi. This is also the next condition, that that it's from this person didn't just take it. So if I had something sitting on my table, let's say I had some guests over, and I had say I had like a bunch of money just sitting on the table, and then all of a sudden I didn't realize someone just took it, and it was just sitting on the table. And this is not a place where you put money. This is me being careless. And so also if I were to say I had a motorcycle and I put my motorcycle in front of the store, but I leave it with the key inside. I don't lock it up, I don't do anything. I just leave it with the key inside in front of it with no lock or anything. And then I come back and I see it's missing. I find the person, can I take his hand off? Of course, like with the hakim and whatnot. No, because I left the key there. I was negligent. And so it needs to be in a place that normally would be a safe place. So if I had it in the garage and then it was taken, okay, this is the, hirs, here is like a safe place. Whatever you would consider, like Imam Ghazali, he mentioned that what this means is like whatever would be considered as this person is not negligent with what he did, like where he left this thing. He wouldn't be considered negligent. So if there was things in a house, so if someone stole my furniture in the house, the furniture was sitting in the living room. This is normally where furniture stays, as opposed to if I had like a gold necklace or ring or something of that sort, like of course like for a wife and whatnot. But if this was stolen, but it was just sitting out on the table, this would not be a hirz mithlihi. If it was in a safe, okay, this is something that it would be hirz mithlihi. This would be a thing that is normally and something like hirz is like a safe place, like something that's safe, and mithlihi is something like this would normally be stored in this place. So in this, of course, like for a car, normally it would be like a garage, or and same thing like a motorcycle, normally would be inside of a garage at night, as opposed to someone being careless, like just leaving it out on the road, at night. Like in Cairo, if I were to leave my motorcycle out on the road, I can't like blame myself. If I wake up in the morning, I don't see it there. Of course, this is not smart. So of course, this person needs to have put it in a place that is normally safe. And this is all according to the thing, and according to, we go back to like the urf, we go back to the customs of the land. Where is something normally stored? And so this is how we would look at that. And also, say if someone has a car, and then I heard people were stealing like metal from the bottom of cars and something weird. But normally this is not something that needs extra protection. Like if someone had this in their carport and whatnot, and someone going under that, this would normally be a safe place for it. And so we'd always look at the urf. Is this person considered negligent or no? And this is what would be considered. If they're considered negligent, okay, then this would not, this person who stole, yes, he's a thief, but he's not a sariq that would get his hand cut off. And so also the next condition that he mentions here, so he says, "An yasuka nisaban qimatuhu rubu' dinar," so that this thing has to have at least 308, I think, dollars worth of today, and like this is the 4 grams of gold. And then also he mentions here, hirzi mithlihi, in a place that is safe, or something like this is normally stored in safe. And also he mentions la milka lahu fihi. And so he means like that the sariq, the person who took this money, he has no right to this money. Like he has no right to this money. Of course, say someone stole, or like say someone was someone stole something from this person, or he took it, or he didn't give it back, and this person was refusing to give him back his say this person loaned him he loaned him a car, or and whatnot. Say he loaned him a car, and then when he loaned him the car and he wants to get his car back from this person says, no, I'm not giving you the car, and he's holding him back from it. So if this person went there and grabbed his car back from him by force, or stole it at night, he's not stealing anything. Like this is his. And so that there's no problem with that. Or if it's something that's owned between him and the other person, say they're sharing it, and then he steals it, it's shared milk, like it's shared property, and so it's not going to be the same. He's not going to be liable for the had in the same. Similar to this is if someone was a partnership in like if someone had a partnership to a certain money, and one of the partners of the business stole money. They all share this wealth, and this person has some type of right to the money, so he's not going to be liable to getting his hand cut off, because he has a right to some of the money, or like to a part of this, and that's like mushah, that is spread about the whole money. And also he says, وَلَا شُبْهَةَ فِي مَالِ الْمَسْرُوقِ مِنْهُ, and so also that there's no shubha. As I mentioned, if there's any shubha, this is something that stops the hudud from being applied. It doesn't mean that this person's not going to be taken to task and have to pay back everything and make sure that he gives everyone back their rights, and he might have something else applied, depending on like the hakim, what he decrees, but he's not going to have his hand taken off from this if there's a shubha, which is some type of a question. And of the examples of this is, say you have a wife that feels like her husband isn't giving her nafaqah. And so she thinks that her husband's not giving her nafaqah enough, so she goes ahead and steals some of his stuff and starts selling it on eBay, and so she's getting money and whatnot. And she thinks that this person isn't giving her rights, and so she's stealing from him. And she, in general, she needs to be paid for like her nafaqah and whatnot, but she has some type of this, she has a misconception here, and so the shubha would stop her from getting her hand cut off. And same thing, like if there was a kid, the kid thinks that his father is not helping him out with the things that he wants, and so he thinks his father is being muqassir, and like that he's not doing his due duty, so he steals money from him. Okay, this is not right. And the same thing, like if the father was stealing from his kid, it's not right. But this would also be like a shubha. Like he thinks he has some right to this money, so it'd be a preventative matter from getting his hand cut off. And so the next thing the Abu Shujaa, he says here, rahimahullah, he says, وَتُقْطَعُ يَدُهُ الْيُمْنَى مِنْ مَفْصَلٍ الْكُوَى. And so the core is this. So like from this wrist, he would get it from the mafsil. The mafsil is the joint. So he'd get it taken off from the joint. And this comes from the sunnah, of course. And this is of the important parts of the sunnah. If we just had فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, like we have this ayah. If it wasn't explained in the sunnah that it was only from here, how would we know if we're supposed to take all of it? Like the yad is all of this. So this would be from the core, and this comes from the sunnah. And this is also this is where it would be taken off from the right hand. He says yaduhul yumna. This is the right hand. Min mafsalil al-kur. And the kur is this, which is the wrist. He says فَإِن سَرَقَ ثَانِيًا فَقُطِعَتْ رِجْلُهُ الْيُسْرَى. And so if he steals again, this person already got his right hand taken off, then he says if he steals the second time, he's going to get his left foot taken off. And this is like the from the ankle and whatnot. When saraka thalithan, so if he steals the third time, qutiyat yaduhu al-yusra, he would have his left hand taken off at this point. So he's not going to take off both hands right away. So like if someone the first time, they get their right hand taken off. The second time, they get their left foot taken off. So they're not left without any hands. So they still have a hand and they have one foot. They're getting around. But then if they do it the third time, then they would have their left hand taken off. And then he says, وَإِن سَرَقَ رَابِعًا قُطِعَتْ رِجْلُهُ الْيُمْنَى. Then he gets his other foot taken off. And so this is if he does all four. So he's going to have all four of his limbs taken off from there. And then he also says, فَإِن سَرَقَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ عُزِّرَ وَقِيلَ يُقْتَلْ. And so he says here, and if he keeps stealing after this, and if he steals after this, he would get a ta'zir. As we mentioned, the ta'zir is something less than 40 lashes. And then waqila, in like a weak opinion, is that he would be killed. Like he would be killed in a death penalty for this. And this is and this is a view, but it's very weak. And this is a very, very weak view. And this is not acted upon in there. And there's a hadith that comes with this general meaning, but it's not acted upon. Whether it's because of the but this hadith is not acted upon. There's also a hadith for the shurb al-khamr that talks about that there would be a death penalty for someone who continues to do this like so many times, and this hadith is abrogated. If it's accepted, it's abrogated as well. And also another point that I'll just mention, it's something that I got from one of my shuyukh when he talked about this thing. He said, what if somebody got their hand cut off and they put their hand in an ice container and they took it to a doctor and he stitched it up for them? Is this okay? And he said, no problem. So this is Sheikh Ahmed Makrami. He said, no problem. Like in this day and age, the important thing is that the hand got cut off. What you do with your hand afterwards is up to you. And so like if somebody wanted to have it reattached afterwards, no problem. And the same thing with the jinayat. Like if someone, if they were to have qisas done, and they had, like say someone cut off someone else's finger, so then he wants to get his finger cut off in retaliation, so when he cuts it off in retaliation, he gets it, and he has someone else sew it back on, no problem. And that doesn't invalidate that the had was done. The had was done, and then it was also, and if he wants to put it back on afterwards, that's his choice, and like we have, the important thing is that it happened. It's not the important thing that he doesn't get his hand back. And that's just normally what would be the consideration, but there's no problem if he were to have it reattached afterwards, which is a fun fact. And this is what Sheikh Ahmed Makrami, that he said he gave this in when he was talking about this particular issue, which I thought was very interesting. And the next thing that we're going to talk about something that is similar to jihad. And then we're going to talk about two things that are similar to jihad, and it's important that they're understood separate from them. So, are there any questions before we go into this next chapter of Qutta Tariq? No questions?
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, the one that got his hand or limbs cut off can keep his limbs.
He can keep it. Like you mean the piece that fell off Yeah, it's his. You can have it. No problem. And so the next chapter is for Qutta' Tariq. And Qutta' Tariq and Qata', and like you would say is like Qata'. This is someone who cuts off the road. It's like a highway robber is what we would say, like Qutta' Tariq. Qutta' is like the plural, and one of them would be Qata'. Qata' Tariq, which is a highway robber. It's someone who stops the road. It stops people from going on the pathway. Like normally, like if you had someone who's traveling from A to B, if you have some robbers, even if they don't steal, maybe they're not steals, they're just thugs. They're thugs that are going to scare people from going down the road, and people are not going to feel, they're not going to be safe if they go down this road, because they know they might either get they might get messed with, or maybe they take their property. Maybe they don't take their property. Maybe they're just thugs. They're stopping the road, and they're scaring people. Maybe they're fighting people. Maybe they're killing. Maybe they're stealing. Maybe they're not. So these are all different aspects of it. But in general, it's someone who's is on the road that steals or takes things from force, or he just scares people on the road themselves. And so the basis for this particular like this masala is what Allah says in Surah Al-Ma'idah: إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض. And so this is the ayat that comes here, and it gives these different things for like the response, the jazat, or like the reward for the people that go to war. Yuharibun Allah wa Rasulah, the people that go to war with Allah and His Messenger. And the Mufassirun, they always talk about this as Qutta' Tariq, and then like the people who are on the highway robbers. وَيَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا, that they go about the earth and spreading fasad, like a corruption. And their reward is what? أَن يُقَتَّلُوا, and is to be killed. أَوْ يُصَلَّبُوا, which is to be crucified. And of course, the crucifixion that is in Islam is not while they're alive. This is after they're dead. So like after they're dead, they would be put up onto, they would be hung up in public view for a time before like their body actually decomposes or anything. But they would be put up as a sign for anyone else that wants to go do this act, that you say this is the response. This is the response that you would get. So أو يصلبوا, which is that after they are killed, like they're executed, after they're killed, they would be put up as a sign for anyone else who wants to think about doing something like that. أو تقطع أيديهم أو تقطع أيديهم, or that their hands would be cut off. وأرجلهم من خلاف, and that their legs would be cut off from the opposite side. So like their one hand and the leg from the opposite side. أو ينفوا من الأرض, or that they would be banished from the place. And so each one of these individual punishments are specific, as the Mufassirin have given, and they talk about this. Each one is specific for how many of these wrong things that this person does. So what exactly are they doing? And so we'll talk about that inshallah. And so he says here, فَصْلٌ وَقُطَّعَ الطَّرِيقِ عَلَى أَرْبَعَةِ أَقْسَامٍ. So he says there's 4 types of قُطَّعَ الطَّرِيق. He says one of them, إِنْ قَتَلُوا وَلَمْ يَأْخُذُوا الْمَالِ قُتِلُوا. And so this is the first type. The first type is the people that kill, but they don't take any, they're not stealing. They're just, they're merely killing. Then their response would be that they would be also killed as well. This is in retaliation to these highway robbers that just kill people. And so he says here, the second group, فَإِن قَتَلُوا وَأَخَذُوا الْمَالَ قُتِلُوا وَسُلِبُوا. So what if they steal, and they kill and they steal? So they're killing and they're pillaging. So if they do both of these, then they would be killed and retaliate, and they would be killed. They would be given the had, a death sentence, as well as sulibu, that they would be, after they are killed, they would be put up and hung up in public view. And this is like for a time before they decompose, like before any decomposition happens really. But they would be put up as an example, and made an example for anyone else who wants to come and do this thing, that this is what would happen. And then he also says, in the of course the third type here, وَإِنْ أَخَذُوا الْمَالِ وَلَمْ يَقْتُلُوا تُقَطَّعُ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُمْ مِنْ خِلَافٍ. So what if they only steal money, but they don't actually kill people? They just rob them. In this case, then they would have their hands taken. They would have one hand taken from the right side, and then one leg taken from the left side, like the foot, I mean. And then he says here, فَإِنْ أَخَافُوا السَّبِيلِ وَلَمْ يَأْخُذُوا مَالًا وَلَمْ يَقْتُلُوا حُبِسُوا وَعُزِّرُوا. And so here he says here, when يُنْفَوْنَ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ, and the way that he gives us is, what if they just scare people on the road, and they're someone that scares on the road. They don't steal anything, and they don't kill anybody, but they're being thugs on the road that are scaring the people from the road. In this case, they would be locked up, and they would also be they would get ta'zir, whatever the imam saw as proper, and they would be locked up here. And so these are the different ways. And just a story that to give, back in the day, there was a bit of turmoil that happened in Egypt. And one of my shuyukh, he told me about this, that there was a group of when there was turmoil that happened in Egypt, they opened up the jails, and they let out all of the thugs and all of the criminals in the jails. When the one guy was getting replaced, before he got replaced, he opened up the jails and let all the thugs come out and run around the land. And so these thugs ran around the land, and they started killing people and creating all kinds of chaos. And because there wasn't a police force and whatnot, then the people took matters into their own hands. And they were actually like these thugs and like these criminals, like hardcore criminals. They were killing people, maybe raping and stealing and whatnot. And so some of the people, they took matters into their own hand and established the shariah here. They took them, killed them, and then hung them up on the street. And it wasn't after just a few of these people got hung up that the rest of the people stopped. Everyone else stopped after that. It was one of these things when they applied this sharia, this stopped everyone else from coming and doing this thing. And so this is definitely something that it works as a tactic of putting the fear of God into some people, and even if it's just the fear of being hung up and shown what's going to happen if you guys keep doing this. But a couple of these people were taken that were doing these highway robbers. Some of the regular people, like they came up with their own force and took people and applied the sharia on them, and then this stopped it in its tracks. From the rest of the criminals trying to do this. And so then he mentions here the last thing. So we have these 4 different groups. The first one, if they kill, they are killed, but they don't take any money. If they don't take any money, then they're just killed in response. What if they kill and they take money? Then they are killed, and then they're hung up and they're hung up as crucified. Sulibu is crucified, but they're not crucified alive. This is something like Islam doesn't prescribe crucifixion alive for someone while they're alive. So this should be understood properly. And also, and then if they take the money but they don't kill anybody, then they would get their right hand and their left hand taken off. This is more than just stealing money, because if they're just stealing money, then they would get their hand taken off. But they're also scaring people on the road and doing this this robbing, highway robbing and whatnot. So they would have this happen done. And if they only they make a khafu, which is like ikhafa, which is like scaring people and threatening people on the road. In this case, then they would be taken into prison, and also have ta'zir done to them, which is whatever the imam says. As long as it would be less than 40 lashes. And he mentions last thing in this chapter, and وَمَنْ تَابَ مِنْهُمْ قَابْلَ الْقُدْرَةِ عَلَيْهِ سَقَطَتْ عَنْهُ الْحُدُودُ وَأُخِذَ بِالْحُقُوقِ. So so what if you have this highway robber that was a highway robber for 20 years, and he was a bunch of thugs, and he was on the road and whatnot, and they never found him yet. Like these guys never could catch him. So then all of a sudden he decided to make tawbah. He's like, I was a highway robber for 20 years, and now I want to make tawbah to Allah. So if he makes tawbah, then these particular hukuk here will be dropped from him. So if he makes tawbah, and then afterwards he was like, I used to be a highway robber, but I made tawbah. And no one got him while he was in a state before his tawbah, like while he was an actual highway robber. Before they were able to get to him, he made tawbah and he dropped. All of these hudud here will be dropped. And then he says, وَأُخِذَ بِالْحُقُوقِ. So what if he stole from somebody? Then this stealing, he has to give back whatever he stole. If he killed somebody, then this person that he killed, the family has the right to do qisas on him. That's why he says ukhidha bil hukuk, that he'll be taken to account for the rights of the people. So you would treat him not as a highway robber, but you would treat him as anyone else who had killed, stolen, done one of these other things here, and he would be treated according to that. But as far as the rights of the highway robber for being qutta' tariq, he would not be treated as this if he made tawbah before they caught him. Say they caught him before he made tawbah, like he was being chased down, and the authorities got him and took him to task. Okay, then he's going to be taken to task here. If they captured him, then he made tawbah. Your tawbah doesn't help you now. But if he made tawbah, before they captured him, this is when it would drop the hudud from him that are specific to the highway robbery or the qutta' tariq. And this is the chapter here that what he brings about the qutta' tariq. And this, if there's any questions, let me know here before we move on to the next section. So the next thing he mentions here is he's going to go into the chapter that has to do with sa'il, and he mentions this here, and it's called like the hukm as-siyal, which is if someone comes up and fights someone else, then they have the right to defend themselves and to defend the people that are around them, or it's obligatory for them, like for themselves, to like if someone's just going to steal their money, they can give them the money if they want, or they can fight for their money. And if they fight for their money, then they're mujahid. And if they die in front of their money, then as the hadith comes, that whoever is killed in front of his money, then he is a shaheed. Like if he's fighting for his own wealth. So you have this robber comes up to you, you can defend yourself. You have the right to defend yourself. So the author, he says, fasl وَمَنْ قُصِدَ بِأَذَى فِي نَفْسِهِ أَوْ مَالِهِ أَوْ حَرِيمِهِ فَقَاتَلَ عَنْ ذَلِكَ وَقَتَلَ فَلَا ضَمَانَ عَلَيْهِ. So he says if someone here was like if he was intended with some harm, وَمَنْ قُصِدَ بِأَذَى, adha is harm, and qusid, like if he was intended, someone tried to do harm to him, fi nafsihi, like in this individual person. So if this person was going to have something done bad to him, such as, he says kusida, so he doesn't necessarily say who's the one doing the harm, but this encompasses other people that would be attacking him, or even an animal. Say someone has a camel, and the camel went crazy and started to attack this person, and he defended himself. So he says here, fi nafsihi aw malihi, he defends himself, or he defends his money or his possessions. Like mal is more than just money, like we think money, but it's possessions. Aw harimihi, harim here, this is the word that harim, you'll hear like the Masri, and they talk about harim, which they mean is women, like this person's wife, like his woman, or like if it was like an amma, this is the same thing as well. And so he says فَقَاتَلَ عَنْ ذَلِكَ, so he fought. قَاتَلَ is different than قَتَلَ, and so muqatal or qital doesn't necessitate the actual killing. So the fight, qital, is fighting, and qatl is killing. So he says فَقَاتَلَ عَنْ ذَلِكَ, so if he fought and defended himself, وَقَتَلَ, and so he fought and then he actually killed. He killed whoever this person was that was against him, or it was it was like an animal and whatnot that was attacking him or his family or his possessions. He says فَلَا ضَمَانَ عَلَيْهِ, and so he says if he killed in this case, then there's nothing upon him. Dhaman is that he won't be held liable for the people that were killed, or the animals. Say this was the camel, the crazy camel came up and started attacking him or his family and whatnot. And he killed the camel out of self-defense. There's no problem. Like he's not going to be held liable for doing this. And there's other things to be noted in this particular chapter, is that when it comes to defending oneself, it's always akhaf fal-akhaf. So if this person that is coming and attacking this person, say he's attacking this person, and this person can merely raise his voice, and this person's going to run away, then he can't punch him. If he can protect himself and hold his ground by just merely raising his voice, then he has no right to punch this person, hit him, shoot him. He has no right to anything other than just raising his voice. If he can't do it without hitting him, or without hitting him, like if he can do it with just like his fists, he can defend himself and get this person to leave with just by hitting him 1 or 2 times with his fist, then this is all he's allowed to do. He can't do anything more than this. And if he needs a stick, but if he were to shoot him, it would be overkill, then of course, like, he can't shoot him. He only uses a stick. You always use the least amount of force necessary, and you never use more than the amount of force necessary when it comes to defending oneself or defending the people that are that are with him, like his family and whatnot. As far as defending himself, this is one thing. Like, if he's defending his own possessions, he can do it, or he doesn't have to. Like, he can defend himself, or he doesn't have to. If like someone's coming up and wants to steal from him, does he have to steal? Does he have to fight this person? Like, if this person's just robbing him for his money, he's not trying to kill him, but he's just going to rob him for his money. Does he have to fight for himself or for his money? And it's permissible for him to give him the money and just let it go, or or he's also allowed to fight. But if it's his family, let's say it's his wife. If his wife is going to be taken, in this case, then he has to fight. It's not. He has no choice in the matter. He has to fight to defend her. Of course, this is with his ability. If he has any ability to fight, he has to fight with all of his ability to defend his wife and her honor. And in this case, or any of his, like if he has children and whatnot, the people that are around him that are under his protection, he has to protect them. It's obligatory for him to protect them from these people with whatever means capable that he's able to do. And so this is an important thing to mention. And there was a Sahabi, I forget the Sahabi's name, but he was taken by, there was like someone who came up and wanted to rob him in the highway, and he wanted his money, and so he gave him his money, and then the person made a move towards his Emma, like his slave girl. And as soon as he did this, he cut off his head right away. He was just like, bah. he's like, if you want my money, you can have my money. But if you want to mess with like erd, like you want to mess with of course like a Emma. In this case, it's not quite a wife, but it's also the same. It's like the erd. Like this is he would have nothing of it. He took his head he took his life right away without even thinking. And so it was one thing like to give him money, okay, but if you're gonna try to take his lady, that's a whole nother thing. And he didn't even blink before he took his life. And so and of course, this is something we have to see that each one of these is dealt differently. So of course, defending oneself is, if he's able to defend himself, then this is something, there is a difference of opinion when it comes to, do you have to defend yourself? If it's only you, it's not like your wife or your family, but it's only you that needs to defend yourself, do you have to fight for yourself or not? And there's a difference of opinion whether or not the person has to fight for himself and whatnot. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And he also says, وَعَلَى الرَّاكِبِ الدَّابَّةِ ضَمَانُ مَا أَتْلَفَتْهُ دَابَّتُهُ. So, say a person was riding a camel, and this camel started running into the people around him and destroyed a bunch of property. And so he's riding him, or he was riding a donkey, and his donkey went crazy and destroyed some property. Then, and this person that is riding the animal, he has to pay for the damages that have been done by his camel this camel or his animal that did this damage. He has to pay for this damage. And this is also in general for someone who has something that is under their property that causes damages. Then they have to pay for the damages that are done if they're held liable for this. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Alright, inshallah, we'll go to the next section, and and this is also a very important section, which is similar to these last two. And this is what is called Qital al-Bugha. And this is very important that there's a difference made between this and the bab of jihad. So some people have they made jihad like, they didn't make a differentiation between jihad between Muslims and other. They think that you can do jihad against Muslims. You can't do jihad against Muslims. There's a different thing when it comes to Muslims. If they have an issue between them, then they go into ahkam al-bugha, and there's a different way of dealing with them as opposed to dealing with people in the actual acts of jihad. And so al-bugha, this is something, al-baghi is dhulm. Like baghi is dhulm, and it's going over the bounds of what someone should have. And so what this chapter talks about is when you have a group of Muslims that comes out from under the leadership of the Islamic leader. So you have an Islamic leader over a land, and you have a group that wants to go against them. and they separate from them, and they want to go to war against them. And like an example of this that happened is the example of the mani'u zakah. So the mani'u zakah, according to the Shafi'i opinion, the opinion of Imam Shafi'i, these people weren't kuffar. Yes, they were considered under the general, like when Abu Bakr, he had like the like they would call it qitala ahlul ridda. So like the people that were refusing, like ridda means to go back on something, and this could be either full-fledged, such as, yes, there were groups of the after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were groups of the Arabs that actually irtaddu an dinihim, like they actually did ridda, they left the deen in totality, and they left Islam, and they said, we don't want this. And they're weak in their iman at the beginning, and they were doing it because of the pressure outside. But after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after he died, then a lot of them from the Arab, they went back on, they left Islam. It's not like all of them, but there was a major groups of the Arabs that left Islam, and they went out. And Abu Bakr, he went and he fought them. And then there's also the group of the people that were still praying, still in general, saying they were still saying La ilaha illallah. They were praying, and they still established the salah, but they said, we're not going to pay zakah to you. And they had a ta'wil, like they were muta'awwilin. They had the ta'wil that khud min amwalihim sadaqah. So this khud anta, like the fi'l or the fa'il here for the fi'l al-amr is anta, which is talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like directly in the Quran, khud min amwalihim sadaqah. And so they said this was only for the Prophet; it wasn't for anyone after him. And so because they were new to Islam, and they were also new to the time of the revelation was open to naskh or abrogation, and there was some things that were unclear. For in this case, they fell into the shubha, and they thought that khud min amwalihim was something specific for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they weren't going to give it to Abu Bakr, the Khalifa after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They weren't going to give him the zakat. So they stopped from giving the zakat, but they were still in general holding to Islam. Besides this, of course, this is a pillar of Islam. But at this time, they were muta'awwil, and so they were fought. And when they were fought in a different way than the Ahlul Ridda. Like the people that actually left the deen in totality, like there's certain ahkam that goes into how they are fought. They're fought with a certain, like their women are taken captive, and their children are taken captive and taken into slavery. And that is how, in jihad, this is what happens when the women and children are taken. They're taken into slavery. But this is different. And the same thing also when you have the different Muslims that went in war against each other, and they had battles between each other. There's a different way that they're taken. We don't take other Muslims into captive, like into slavery, because they're Muslims still. And so these were of the people that were considered Ahlul Baghi, according to like the Shafi'i opinion of this. And also Imam al-Nawawi, he brings this, and he also brings in Sharh Muslim, he talks about this particular in the hadith, talking about these people that left, that were preventing the zakat from being given. He said that they were still Muslims, they're muta'awwil, and they were being treated as Ahlul Baghi. And so this happens with groups that they're Muslims, but they go against the leaders in control, and they're doing khuruj or something of this sort, and there's a certain way that they're dealt with. And this is what this chapter will talk about, inshallah. And it's important that some of the mu'asirin and the people that have no ilm whatsoever, they were treating the Ahlul Baghi as if they were kuffar, like that they should just be killed and put to death all at once with big, like to bomb them and whatnot. They're telling like go throw bombs on them, and this is ridiculous. This person has never read a book of ilm. And this is not how they're treated with, because they're still Muslims. Even if they do go against the rulers and whatnot, and they are Ahlul Baghi, then of course the Ahlul Baghi is the people that don't have a right. They're the ones that maybe they have some type of shubha that comes up that makes them go against the rightful leader, but they have no right in what they're doing. As opposed to the rightful leader could be of the Ahlul Baghi as well, if he's the one that is the one that has no right in him going against these other people. So he could be the one of that. And this goes back to the ayah وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. So we're supposed to make, if these the two ta'ifa, like the ta'ifatani, so like we have these two groups of people from the mu'mineen, which means that they're all mu'min. Like they're, just because they're fighting each other doesn't mean that they're no longer mu'min. If they fight, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, so make things right between them. فَإِنْ بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. So if one of them goes against bagat, if they have baghi, they have zulm and oppression, فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي, so fight the one that is oppressing, like the oppressing group. We're supposed to look and see who is the oppressing one. حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ, until they come back to the ruling of Allah, or the rule of Allah. فَإِنْ فَاءَتْ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, and if they stop and they come back to it, that's what tafi is, to come back. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, and then بِالْعَدْلِ وَأَقْسِطُوا, and so to make things right between them with adl, with justice, and وَأَقْسِطُوا, and to be just and get rid of any overgoing and any bounds in this. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ, like Allah loves the people who are just, and that they make sure that there is no oppression in the matter. And so this is the basis where it comes back to this particular ayah, and when we look at. And so he brings in here and he says, وَيُقَاتِلُ أَهْلُ الْبَغِي بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطٍ. So he says there are three conditions for fighting أهل البغي. And the first of these three that he brings in here, أَن يَكُونَ فِي مَنَعَةٍ. And so, and that these people, like for them to be considered Ahl al-Baghi and for them to be fought, they actually need to have shoka. They actually have to have some type of power, like such as they have weapons. You know, if these people are just like people that are, they don't agree with the leader. Say they don't agree with the leader and they say stuff and they have things that they say, like such as the Khawarij. When before they actually did any fighting, it was just a inhiraf. Like they were going against the leader openly with their voice, but they didn't actually have, if they weren't doing any power and they weren't coming across them with a power and a leader and whatnot, then in this case they would not be fought. So you don't fight them unless they have actual shoka in this case. Of course, the leader can do what he sees as right for, like the Islamic leader, and of course that's with its own conditions. It's a whole other subject to say what is Islamically considered an Islamic leader, not just a Muslim that happens to have control, but a leader who is establishing the deen in the dunya. And leading people according to it. This is the imam or the emir of the mu'min, and this can be in a small scale or can be in a larger scale. And so he says here, so the first of these conditions that Abu Shujaa brings here for Ahl al-Baghi is that first they have mana, which they actually have a force to be reckoned with, like a actual force of power with weapons and whatnot. And he says, وَأَنْ يَخْرُجُوا عَنْ قَبْضَةِ الْإِمَامِ, and so that they also they leave the power of the imam that is in charge. So they separate from him, and they actually have their own place that they are gathered together in. So whether they're not under the force of the imam, the imam is not able to get to them. So they're a separate force here, as opposed to if they're just like spread out within the rest of people and they just have some type of wrong thinking. This is different than them having getting together in a separate place from that, or taking a village or taking a city by themselves and saying this is our city, no one can come in there, and they separate themselves from the imam. Then this is what he's talking about here, that they separate themselves. And yakhruju an qabda. Qabda is like the grabbing or the ability of the imam to get to them. And he says here, وَأَن يَكُونَ لَهُمْ تَأْوِيلٌ سَائِغٌ, and so that they have some type of ta'wil. They have a reason for them doing this. If they don't have a ta'wil sa'ig, then they're like they don't have any reason for them going against the imam in the first place. Then this is like qutta' tariq. Like they would be like the people that are the highway robbers if they don't have a reason behind this. But this is like the Ahlul Baghi. Usually they have some type of reason that they are going against the imam, such as like the Khawarij. They thought that he wasn't ruling with what Allah gave and prescribed, and they had a reason that they were going against them, even if it was faulty. They had some type of ta'wil that they were holding on to. He says, say like that, it's understandable. Like this is something that you can understand why they're doing it, and it's not just them wanting to go to war. by themselves, but they have a reason behind it and some type of thing that is a misunderstanding in the deen or in their aqidah or between them and the powers, like the Islamic powers in control. And so he says, وَلَا يُقْتَلُ أَسِيرُهُم. And he says, here, this is very clear. This when goes into the next type. So we talked about the 3 conditions for them to be fought. And then when it comes to the actual fighting, he gives a couple rulings here. He says, وَلَا يُقْتَلُ أَسِيرُهُم. So if you take their prisoners if you take prisoners of war, you can't kill them. They're Muslims. Their blood is haram to kill. You can't kill the Muslim. Once you get them under your control, you cannot kill that Muslim whatsoever. Even if they're from Ahlul Baghi, yes, they're from Ahlul Baghi, you can't kill them though. They're Muslim. And then also he says here, وَلَا يُغْنَمُ مَالُهُم. And so also that you don't take their money, like their property is their property still. You can't take their property away from them. In this case, their property is still protected, and their life is still protected. Of course, if in the battlefield they get killed, okay, this is one thing, but you can't actually like put them to death after you've taken them into possession. This is not the point of the battle is to stop them from doing what they're doing, like stop them from their buggy, is to stop them from going against the ruler. That's the point, is to stop them from doing this, not to kill them. That's not the goal. And he says here also, وَلَا يُذَفَّفُ عَلَى جَرِيحِهِمْ. And tadfif, like yuzaffaf, means to like put them out. So the jarih is someone who is majruh. It's someone who has wounds. So you can't put their like you have someone who's been shot and he's laying on the ground and he's crying. You can't just kill him. In this case, you would have to take him and give him the medical care that he needs. You can't put the person that is wounded to death. That is from these are ultimately Muslims. Like this is ultimately, yes, they're Muslims. They have problems between each other, but you don't treat them like you would treat kuffar, and you cannot treat them in this way. They still have rights of Muslims, and you can't take their wealth it's not ghanima. So you can't take their wealth and say that we split this up within the Muslims and between the people, the mujahideen and whatnot. No, this is different. And there's certain ahkam that goes off in this. And there's also other ahkam that is mentioned in the bigger books where وَلَا يُقْتَلُ, that you don't go to war with them with something that is azim, like with bombs. Like something that is a big explosion, you can't do this. It's haram to do this. Like to actually send bombs onto someone that is from Ahlul Baghi. In this case, it's totally haram to like send in like airstrike on them. This is haram. And this is some of the nonsense that some of the madkhalis way back in the day, they were saying some of this nonsense when they had people that were doing so-called khuruj, and they wanted to have them, they wanted bombs to be dropped on them to get rid of them. And so of course, like this is ignorance from a major scale. You don't do this. And this is in the jumhur. Like this is not just the Shafi'i opinion in this. Like the majority opinion is that you cannot kill a person once you have them under your control. You can't kill a Muslim just because you got them under control for this. Wallahu musta'an. And so this is there's definitely a lot more to this in bigger books that are discussed, and there's also books that are written specifically on this. And this is an issue where there's a lot of people, they don't understand the Bab al-Jihad, Bab al-Baghi, and also Bab al-Siyad and whatnot. They don't understand these aspects of fiqh, and you'll find that a lot of these organizations, they go to extremes in a lot of these areas, and they're totally off of what Islam has prescribed in this issue. Wallahu musta'an. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Any questions?
Alright, so Sheikh, when you're fighting them, you're allowed to kill them, but after you catch them, you can't kill them.
The goal is not to kill. The goal is not for us to kill them. The goal is to stop them. So if we're able to stop them and he's laying on the ground, we can't kill him. If that makes sense. But if the only way you can stop them is with killing, you killed them. Okay. And this is and there's no in the Qital al-Baghi, there's no qisas. There's no qisas. Yeah. Oh yeah. Any other questions? Alright, inshallah, we'll call it for today. And the next chapter, we'll talk about ridda, like the hadd of ridda. I would go into it, but I think just for time's sake tonight, we'll stop it here. and then it'll go into Kitab al-Jihad, and then we're close to the end of the book, inshallah. Then we'll talk about some of the other things that have to do with the other things from like a legal point of view, and then we'll also talk about like eating and drinking, and then he finishes up with Kitab al-Atq at the very end. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.